Welcome, Christoph. How are you?
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm great here in Bangkok today.
Oh, today you're in Bangkok. Sounds good. All right, so just a quick introduction of who you are and what you do.
My name is Christoph. I'm one of the two co founders and new organizers of the Nomad Summit. So I've been a fully location independent perpetual traveler since 2017, originally coming from Germany. And I have attended the last two Nomad Summits in 2019 and 2020 before the pandemic. And now, together with my amazing co founder, Kai, we have brought it back.
Interesting. Okay, so I attended the same Nomad Summit in 2019, but unfortunately we didn't get to know each other, so we didn't cross paths then. But now we are today. Okay, so you grew up in Germany. Tell me a little bit more about your what you were doing. Maybe is it college or were you at working? How did you come about this digital nomad idea, and where did these things come from? Influences.
Absolutely. I've been an entrepreneur all my life. So I actually started my first business when I was 16 and still in school. And after graduating from high school with 19, I went full-time self-employed. Back then, founded a little marketing and advertising agency with a graphic designer. And that was basically the start of my career in the ads and marketing space.
Okay. Now that's kind of a untraditional, unconventional role, right? In Germany, most people probably, when you explain to them you're a digital, or not necessarily then, but you're making money online or you're self-employed, that was kind of going against the current, right? Most people, I assume, are in the trades or they're working in the career, an accountant, computer science, or they're off and doing their masters in sciences or whatever. Was that the case with you?
Absolutely, yes. So if you speak to young people growing up in Germany or basically all over Europe these days, they think of careers whether working for the state, for the government, or for corporates. But working for small businesses or even founding their own business is not top of the head of, I would say, 99%. And so that's always been a bit of my mission to encourage people to share how success stories can actually work. And that's also something that led up to running the Nomad Summit today. So basically my own story in some quick sentences. So I started in the marketing space, and then I somehow transitioned into insurance and finance. So I co-founded an insurance brokerage in Germany that is specialized in children's health insurance. That was back in 2010. And later on, actually, my first location independent business. So we started this as a side hustle. My co-founder and me, he was living in the Cologne area. I was back then still living in Berlin. And when we, after growing this out of a side hustle, became a little bit more successful and wanted to hire our first people, we looked deep into each other's eyes when we met once in like every couple of weeks in person and asked ourselves, like, is this the point in time when we now rent an office, buy office chairs, organize cleaning person, and all these kind of things that you do when you offer a job opportunity to someone? And the answer was very fast and very clear, like, no, that's not how we want to do it anymore, how we want to work anymore. We want to find another way of establishing a remote team culture and hire our staff remote by design from day one. That was back in 2016. And that also gave us then the opportunity to establish a completely new work culture with a small business. We were amazed by the fact that we got super interesting applications by people that were so much more mature, that had so much more work experience, life experience, applying for the job that we offered than we could ever have expected for someone applying for an office job for a 9 to 5. And that was very encouraging. So we had so much work to do back then and only wanted to hire one person in the first place, but we got two irresistible applications that we could not decide in between, so we hired them both. And that was the start into like the fully remote and remote team part of my own life. and encouraged me then myself to sign off from Germany end of 2017, get rid of everything that casts a shadow and does not fit into a suitcase. And since then, I'm a perpetual traveler.
Wow, interesting story. Now, take us back about 2010 to 2016, those years. Who influenced you, or were you watching YouTube? Was it a particular book? What got you on this digital nomad journey?
I wish I had proper resources, materials, or even a mentor back then. But no, it feels like I really worked this out all by myself, by some solid groundwork research, finding out about like potential business setups that I would then come to. And that's, again, a big building block in this story. I found myself becoming a big fan of the e-residency program of Estonia. So when I signed off from Germany and needed a new business setup with a holding structure for holding the shares in this German business that I was still continuing with, I figured out that Estonia is the place that ticks all my boxes. So I signed up for the e-residency program and founded my first company then. Quickly realized that this is a beautiful country that is worth digging deeper and exploring more. So decided to spend my next summer, 2018, in Estonia. And from there, things escalated quickly. So I met some cool Estonians, founded the next company together with them, built a circle of friends, grew into the amazing tech and startup ecosystem, took part a year later in my first hackathon, invited by the e-residency program of the government of Estonia. This was the Digital Nations Hackathon that happened on a remote island, bringing 100 people together, working on the next ideas of how to improve the digital society there. And one of the people working for the company that facilitated that hackathon is Kai Isand, who is now my co-founder in the Nomad Summit. So I met her in 2019. She's Estonian and very well connected, not only in the startup ecosystem, but also professional in conference organizing. So she's head of program of Latitude 59, which is the big lighthouse tech and startup conference in Estonia. And so when we got this opportunity on the table from Johnny a bit more than half a year ago of taking over Nomad Summit as a brand and bringing it back to life, she was the first one who came to my head to give a ring and ask if she wanted to partner up with this. And here we are today. She said yes.
Wow. Wow. So that's pretty amazing. You've been doing some big things already, in Estonia, and then doing the tech and then the hacking stuff. So great to see. So then you mentioned you had attended Nomad Summit in 2019. So how did Southeast Asia, how did Thailand, how did that come about in your radar?
That's a very good question. I definitely wanted to spend winter seasons somewhere warm. I'm just not the snow type of person. And so, yeah, it was pretty clear that many places of Southeast Asia already back then were great hotspots for remote work. I had a soft landing in Singapore. I had a friend back then, or I still have that friend, but he's not living in Singapore anymore. But back then he had a house there with his family, 3 kids, and a lot of space. So he invited me to stay at his guest room for as long as I wanted. That was his words, and I warned him that he should be careful with those. But so I made Singapore my hub to explore all the Southeast Asian countries from there, and Chiang Mai quickly popped up as the nomad hotspot already back in 2018, the end of 2018, when I was planning my trips. So I booked a 7 days return trip from Singapore to Chiang Mai, but I never took that return flight. So I stayed for 3 months. And actually, right? To go full circle, I had found the Nomad Summit website online. I checked the program, and I saw that I could contribute to the program with a workshop about this e-residency program of Estonia that I was just talking about. So I reached out to the team, sent an email to Johnny back then, and offered to host a workshop, and got invited for that. And so both in January 2019 and in January 2020 at the Chiang Mai Nomad Summits, I hosted workshops about the e-residency program of Estonia as a possible launchpad and to empower young individuals who were thinking of starting their first business. And that's how all these things go full circle. How e-residency, Estonia, Nomad Summit, all have been connected for me since the beginning.
Wow, that's fabulous. Now, you mentioned having Singapore as your base as you explored other Southeast Asian countries. Did you ever make it to Vietnam, Da Nang, Ho Chi Minh City? That's where I went. I was based there for like 4 years after Nomad Summit.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, among all these countries in Southeast Asia, Vietnam was the first and only one where I immediately knew that I liked it. So with other countries, it still took a little bit longer of exploring and finding out about the pros and cons. With Cambodia, until today, I don't know if I really like it or not, because it's a country so colorful of pros and cons. But Vietnam definitely was a place that I immediately liked. And actually, after Thailand this year, in March, April, I will go back to Vietnam as well. I will first spend a couple of weeks in Ho Chi Minh City, a city that I really, really love. And then I go north to Da Nang, also for the Vietnam Nomad Fest that is happening there end of March.
Oh, I didn't know about this. Tell us a little bit more. Vietnam Nomad Fest. Where is it? What's happening there? What's going on?
It's going to happen in both Da Nang and Hoi An. So it's like a 2-week program with a focus more on the business side of things in Da Nang, and then more on the spiritual side and mindset, mindfulness side in Hoi An. And it's going to be organized by dear friends of mine, Marcos and Dimitrios, two Greek guys who I actually first met at Bansko Nomad Fest in Bulgaria last summer. And that's also where they met with their team of 2 more to then organize the Athens Nomad Fest last year in September, which we had then chosen to be the official launch for the Nomad Summit. So we had, Kai and me, had worked on that in the background. And at the Athens Nomad Fest, we first unveiled the plans and made it public that the Nomad Summit is coming back to Chiang Mai. And so there is this strong connection with our friends Marcos and Dimitrios, who then decided not only to attend Nomad Summit in Chiang Mai, but also to host the Vietnam Nomad Fest in the end of March.
This is really exciting. I didn't know anything about this. This is great. All right, so let's get to Nomad Summit. What is it for those that have never heard about it or don't know anything about it?
Yeah, as all listeners might have realized by now, this is a global community. The digital nomads worldwide, they meet each other in different places for different events. And there are some lighthouse events now, especially after COVID. The one that I just mentioned, Bansko in Bulgaria, the Bansko Nomad Fest is currently the biggest one, with more than 700 tickets sold last year. So it's an entire week event happening in a little village in the mountainous southern countryside of Bulgaria. And the Nomad Summit used to be that big lighthouse event before COVID. It was first founded in 2015 by an American guy called Johnny FD. And he held it as an annual event in Chiang Mai in Thailand until 2020. He had one in Cancun, I think that was 2019, and one also in Las Vegas in 2018, if I'm correct. And then with the last one in January 2020, it went into a long COVID break and never came back, at least not with Johnny as the organizer. So Johnny had planned to host one in Tbilisi in Georgia in 2020. That, for obvious reasons, then never happened. So it got postponed twice until Johnny then canceled it and refunded everyone who had bought tickets. And that's when he also settled down in Ukraine. He moved to Kiev in, I think, in 2021. And that's when I had lost contact with him a little bit. But then randomly met in the streets of Kiev in August 2023 when I was driving a convoy from Estonia. It's a monthly thing where an initiative called Help 99 collects donations and buys 4x4 vehicles on the secondary market, spray paints them in camouflage and gears them up with like night vision, drone jammers, first aid kits, and once a month a convoy is going from Tallinn, Estonia, 36 hours drive into Kiev. I took part in those convoys several times, and the hotel that we have is literally on the other side of the street of Johnny's apartment. So we randomly met in the streets, and that's where the conversation started again. And at one point also came to the Nomad Summit. Me asking him, like, Johnny, do you want to bring back the Nomad Summit? And he was like, no. Do you want to bring it back? And I was like, no. But as an entrepreneur, you give these kind of opportunities always a second thought. And as this amazing event is not only a part of my very personal story of my nomad lifestyle, but also something that has always brought amazing people together in a very inspiring environment. I couldn't help but think about what would need to happen to me actually wanting to bring back this event. And that was quite clear. So with my profile in the nomad community, I thought if I would do it alone, it will probably just be a mediocre one more digital nomad event like all the others. But if I would bring someone in who not only has experience in hosting much bigger events, but also brings a fresh look into the program, then this could become something extraordinary. And so teaming up with Kai and the team that we brought together here definitely is a key to success. So the Nomad Summit that has just happened 2 weeks ago back in Chiang Mai definitely was something very, very special, not only for me as an organizer, but also for the audience. There were many people that had attended past Nomad Summits. Johnny was there himself to officially hand it over on stage and give his last keynote, sharing his learnings as a retired nomad. And so many new people who have joined the community since then had a couple of magic days in Chiang Mai with us. So Nomad Summit is coming back to stay. It's an annual event, and if you want to experience that, mark down the third weekend of January and come to Chiang Mai, Thailand in early 2026.
Okay, tell us a little bit more about the event in terms of where was it held, how many people attended, and some of the speakers and topics.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We wanted, coming from the program perspective, we wanted to have the Nomad Summit as a program, as a conference that builds on working remotely as the new normal. So our intention was to not just have a conference about how to become a nomad and how to set up your first location independent business, because we understand now 5 years after the last one with COVID and so many people working remotely today, this is like the natural foundation to build on. Working remotely, running a business that is location independent is something that has become very, very normal. And people today ask the question beyond that. Like, now I live a location independent lifestyle. How can I use this to build a better world, to make the world a better place? So the red thread going through the Nomad Summit was for people passionate about building. Everything was about building a independent life, building a business that has impact, building a family that can work with children, getting educated all over the world by a speaker. Her name is Doris Dario. She's mother of 3, where the oldest is 16 and has visited his 50th country last year. So these were the kind of things that we were talking about and getting a lot of inspiration by thought leaders and people top of their game on stage.
Okay, the Nomad Summit I attended in 2018 and 2019, about 300 people came out to those. Did you guys have similar numbers or a little bit less? Or
250 was the amount of attendees we had this time. and we're pretty confident that now, after we have brought back the legend from the past and have recreated something new and have put Chiang Mai back on the map of many nomads who are missing a big event in the city that has all the infrastructure that you need, but not the big event. For next year will be much bigger for sure.
Okay, great. Now, in the years past, some of the events that I went to were like kind of like drop shipping, making money online, and I assume there would be like e-commerce or some categories similar to that you've had or that you focused on. And you mentioned you kind of focused on more like building the lifestyle, starting and things like that. So I guess maybe there's some overlap sometimes.
It's more about building from there. So we, for example, had Vikram Bharati on stage, the founder of Draper Nation, and he was talking about the next idea of how countries will work in the future, like the country on the internet, how people can organize themselves. So there was a lot of vision. There was also a lot of topics about like building balance between physical and location independent businesses. So we had Leah McHugh on stage, who is a digital nomad, but also has now started some local businesses in Thailand. And she shared her vision about how to balance these kind of things. So I would say we found a really good balance as the managers of this program to attract people along the entire journey of being an employee, a remote employee, a freelancer, a founder, a business owner. So this traditional journey to freedom, to location independence, where we always wanted to bring people together across the entire journey. Not only people that start out, not only people that are already way ahead of the game. We wanted to build a platform for all these people to meet the most inspiring minds around a location-independent lifestyle wherever they are on this journey.
Okay. And then how about the attendees? Where do you think most people came from? Were there a good mix of Europeans, North Americans, that type of, or was it, could you put your thumb on anywhere like that, or?
This is a very interesting question, and we had followed this like one by one. With inside the team, we had a Slack channel where every new ticket purchase was popping up with a message and telling us with digital nomads, you often don't really know, as they have residencies, multiple citizenships, and so we definitely can say there is no clear pattern of like a lot of Americans or something. The indicator that we had was the billing address, where people had the credit card registered through which they paid. So that's not like, people have that everywhere, and we saw these flag symbols coming up in our Slack whenever a new ticket purchase came in, and we were amazed by how many different countries we saw there. So there were people from all over Asia. We had that's definitely a thing that has changed to the Nomad Summits in the past before COVID. We definitely had a lot of residents and nationals of Asian countries, Japan, Korea, Singapore. We had some Thai people. We had people with their credit cards registered, even in Vietnam. There were a lot of Australians, Kiwis, Indians, and then all across Europe, Middle East. We were quite thin in Africa. We had some South Africans, and also Latin America was not very present. Of course, there were a ton of US nationals, or let's say people with their credit card registered in the US. As of today, with many people running their business through a US LLC, that can still be a weak indicator if they're actually US people or not. But the variety was huge, so it was a very diverse group, also across genders, skin tones. This was really interesting.
Okay, that sounds really an amazing event. And then you mentioned next year, so maybe you could touch upon anything that you want to mention about next year's expectations or anything like that.
The Nomad Summit this year was consisting of 3 parts. So there was the weekend conference, Saturday and Sunday. That was the main event. And then we had 2 additional parts where one is a hackathon, or we called it a build-a-thon, integrating with the local Thai community. So for that we had about 50% participants from the Thai startup ecosystem, like tech startups from Bangkok and Chiang Mai, and also university students that study all kind of entrepreneurship tracks. And then we had a full week of side events, which we offered as a platform for all attendees, a bit like taking the idea of unconferences to the next level. So we invited all our attendees to host whatever kind of side event they wanted to offer, like workshops, meetups, breakfasts, lunches, dinners. And while this was an idea at the beginning where we were not sure how this is going, in the end we had 56 of these side events and a very busy week, the Nomad Week in Chiang Mai. And so this is definitely something we will emphasize even more next year, and have this one weekend conference that brings people together in we were this year again in the Shangri-La 5-star hotel, where it was in the past in 2019 and 2020. So we wanted to stay here on brand with what the Nomad Summit was in the past. And most probably, I would say we will also go back to the Shangri-La Hotel next year, because this was an amazing venue, and working with them was really extraordinary. But having the week of side events, that is, I think, something that makes Nomad Summit special. That's something that you don't find in other events, and gives it an interactive aspect that is something that's very special.
Okay, and then can you mention the price tag for next year, and who would be a good customer, who would be a good person to attend, if you could recommend or encourage anyone? What type of person?
Sure. Currently we have the super early bird tickets up for $199. It will surely get more expensive from that. So this year we had the standard tickets in the end at $299, and at the very end the door price of $399. So if you think $199 is something that doesn't hurt you today, and you will most probably come, it's definitely a smart move to buy it now, because it's also transferable. So it's not refundable, but transferable. We think that's the most fair way of dealing with these kind of tickets. So if you find out in the last minute that you won't be able to come to Chiang Mai, you will surely find someone who will buy your super early bird ticket from you then. So definitely good argument to get it now. And who is it for? It's definitely for everyone who wants to start into a location independent freedom lifestyle, or is already there, and wants to meet the coolest people on the planet in this lifestyle, and learn both from the talks on stage and from the people in the room what's the hottest stuff coming up, what's the next big thing, what are people working on and working with today, what are the latest tools, the latest trends. So yeah, if you're a type of person who wants to connect with people in person, talk to them, learn from them, and build meaningful connections, maybe even friendships for life, then the Nomad Summit is definitely the place for you.
Yeah, I agree. I really enjoyed my experience in 2018 and 2019, just a few years ago. And,
why don't we turn it around here, and you tell a bit about your experience from back then? What did you get out of it?
Okay, so yeah, good point. Yeah, back then I think your ideal candidate. I was watching Johnny FD for years. Well, maybe a year or two, I guess I should say, 2016 and then 2015, 2016, and he really influenced me about making money online, living overseas. And so that kind of got me thinking when I was living in Minnesota, in the Midwest in America here. And then I said, hey, why don't I just try this? You know, I wanted to get into e-commerce, drop shipping, and things like that. And so I moved to Thailand, Chiang Mai, in 2017, that summer or August. And then I worked online, networked, and then the highlight was attending the Nomad Summit that January. And that's where I met Johnny and then some other people that were building businesses online. And so that it just had a big networking effect on me. And I really enjoyed that aspect. And then I doubled down and focused and moved to Da Nang, Vietnam 6 months later. So it was a good introduction there. And then I wanted to be in Vietnam. And then after Da Nang, I moved to Ho Chi Minh City, and I spent the next 4 years or so roughly there and over COVID. And then I got into sourcing and manufacturing, and that's what I was doing before I moved back to Florida, where my parents live in the U.S. here. So kind of full circle. That's kind of my story.
That's an exciting story. So what needs to happen that we can welcome you again at the next Nomad Summit in January 2026? What would make it the perfect event for you, Vin?
Boy, you guys do such a good job. I mean, I think the speakers were the highlight for me. Just having that, and I think the event, it gets a good crowd, but yet it's small enough. As you mentioned, there's these break-off meetings, or there's a chance for you to network with people that you meet during the day. So that, I think that was the greatest aspect. I met a lot of friends during the downtime, maybe at a tea or a coffee break, or just at a social event. I got to know them, what they were doing, and actually I met up, I think one person for sure, in Da Nang, Vietnam. Just we were talking, and I was like, yeah, I'm in Da Nang, living there now. And he's like, oh, I'm going to Da Nang next month. Let's meet up. And then we did that, and we became lifelong friends. And we met up in South Korea and then Thailand and other stuff like that. So those are those friendships, those that dynamic, the synergies happened, not only watching the main events, but then on the downtime too. So I think that's what I really appreciate about it.
That's super good to hear, because that's also an emphasis of myself. Like, while my co-founder here, my business partner Kai, she is very strong in building a program and having amazing stuff on stage. For me, going to conferences is always about the people. I have never booked or bought a conference ticket based on the speakers on stage, but always because of the vibe, the people that I would meet there. And that's also why I put a lot of energy this time into building this platform at the Nomad Summit and making it as easy as possible for people to meet other people. And there was this crazy idea that I was pitching to so many people because I needed help with that. And that was, I wanted to have an AI matchmaking assistant for the lunch tables. So, we have these 2 conference days where we have a lunch buffet and a seating arrangement. So we basically know how many people are there, what are the tables, what the tables looking like how many people can they seat, and how can we make this more meaningful, instead of people just, especially at the first day when they don't know anybody, just going to the buffet and then sitting down with random people. This can be a lucky punch, or if you're just with people, let's say you don't vibe with, or you don't have the right topics, that can be a wasted opportunity. And so what I really wanted to try, and what we actually made happen then, is we asked people with a 5 questions questionnaire before lunch what they are currently working on, what their big challenges are for 2025, who they would want to talk to and who they would want to meet. So it was like very open questions. And then we fed these answers that we got into an AI model and asked to match people along with the seating arrangement that we had put into the AI to process, and then got out not only a nice list of people and their table numbers, but also reasoning why. So the AI came back with explaining why they group people at table number 1 what is the factor that people have in common that it grouped at table number 2. And so we had 12 tables of, so not everyone participated in that. In the end, I think we had 27 tables, but about half of the people participated, and they were so happy with this seat assignment based on the current interest and the current challenges. And I was actually also quite fascinated how well this AI model made this happen.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know anything about it. Okay.
Yeah, it was just an experiment. It was a wild idea, and in the end, let's say it was a very quick and dirty implementation. But it worked out, and it's definitely something that we want to professionalize and make even better next year.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea. That's really good. About networking, meeting others, and getting solving problems, and then working on different solutions. Okay, so that's very good, Christoph. I'll put the link to Nomad Summit for 2026 for those that are interested. Hopefully, can get in early. And then what about yourself? What do you plan to do? Are you going to be in Thailand for a while, going back to Europe? What's happening for you in the next months or so?
I'm staying in Thailand until end of February. Then I'll go to Vietnam in March. As I said, Ho Chi Minh City first, and then Da Nang for a month. I'll head back to Europe in April. And then we'll also have 2 Nomad Summit events happening in Europe this year. So while the one in Chiang Mai in January is the big annual event that brings everyone together along this journey that I mentioned earlier, we have 2 events where we want to focus on specific stages. And one is happening in August in Estonia. That is all about remote work, remote employment. So not from an HR perspective, not about how to manage a remote team, but for people who want to find their next remote job. So we'll have a job fair where tech startups will exhibit and find their remote talent that they want to hire. And then there will be a second event in September in Switzerland that is for founders of remote companies. So people with a scalable business model who are already a step ahead of the ideation process, who have started out and want to leave their day-to-day task at home for a week, and with a group of around 30 people work for a week in the Swiss Alps on each other's growth business model and propel each other's business together from there.
Wow. So you really have a hand in all of this. You're really living the digital nomad life. So that's great to see. And then if you're out there, you do see this video and then you attend to one of these events, definitely say hi to Christoph. It'll be good.
Absolutely. Find me wherever you are. I'm probably not far.
Sounds good. So thank you so much, Christoph. Really appreciate you taking us back in time and reviving the Nomad Summit and then letting us know about its future fate. So sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.